Women and children first. This is a line which is very much associated with the gallantry of men at a time of crisis. Not least has it become famous as the motto used during the sinking of the Titanic after she struck the iceberg. But where lie its origins? Well, as far as anyone can recall, it goes back to HMS Birkenhead. Birkenhead was a British troop carrier, but also carried some passengers, largely wives and children of officers. In 1852 she struck an uncharted rock off the coast of South Africa and began to sink. 100 soldiers died in the immediate aftermath of the collision as their berths were overwhelmed by water, drowning them all. But everyone else survived and made their way on deck. As usual for ships of that age, there were not enough lifeboats to carry all passengers and troops. What lifeboats there were largely proved useless. One at once began to sink, another one couldn't be lowered into the water due to poor maintenance. This left only 3 small boats in which the women and children were carried away. All throughout this, the troops remained in good order, well disciplined and stood by while the women and children embarked. Soon enough, though, the ship began to break apart. It was only then the captain, Robert Salmond, called out, "All those who can swim, jump overboard and make for the boats." But Lieutenant Colonel Seton of the 74th Foot thought otherwise, and, fearing the boats would be swamped if the men swam for them, thus endangering the women and children, drew his sword and ordered his men to stand fast. Only 3 broke away, trying to save themselves. Everyone else stayed in their place. To give the cavalry horses a chance, they were set free and ushered overboard in the hope they might make it ashore. It was only some 20 minutes or so after having struck the rogue rock that HMS Birkenhead completely broke apart and sank. Some of the men clung to the wreckage, others sought to swim ashore. It was 2 to 3 miles to land. But as though the swimming were not challenge enough, these were shark-infested waters. Many trying to reach land were indeed got by sharks. It was only by the next day that the schooner Lioness reached the site of the disaster and was able to save some 40 to 50 men still clinging to what part of the mast still protruded from the sea. Of the roughly 640 originally aboard, only 193 survived. In one remarkable tale, one of the officers is said to have managed to make his way ashore, and as he dragged himself from the sea, thoroughly exhausted, who should be there waiting for him? His horse, which had been thrown from the ship some time earlier. As news spread of the gallantry shown by the men aboard the Birkenhead, the line "Women and Children First" became known as the Birkenhead Drill. Now, gallantry is not in and of itself British. Men of all nations are well capable of it. But there was something inherently British about this example. The self-restraint, the demonstration of calm, the determination that if one was to face death, one was at least not going to make a spectacle of oneself. The resolve throughout that the women and children should have higher priority. That one was not going to leave this earth scrabbling like a drowning rat in a barrel, tearing down whomsoever was next to one. The Birkenhead Drill set an example. It was a very British example. Of course, not everyone would be able to live up to it. People are human. But the example was made. Heroism of a kind that didn't involve fighting, yet which involved a sense of duty nonetheless. The duty not merely to see the women and children safe, but to face the consequences with steady resolve, without complaint. The insight that might was not right, not if it endangers those that nature requires one to protect. Look at the men aboard HMS Birkenhead, and then tell me about toxic masculinity. Moreover, tell me that all nations are the same, and that there are no differences among their peoples. Tell me that there is not something remarkably British being displayed in hundreds of men calmly facing the perils of an ocean as their ship breaks apart under their very feet. I have lived among people of other nationalities. Stoicism is not a British quality alone. Yet the stiff upper lip displayed on that ship those many years ago is a prime example of British spirit. It was embraced and celebrated by the nation at the time. People recognised not only the bravery, but the deep expression of civility. These men died not merely as men would, drowned or eaten by sharks. They died civilised men. Men who held something sacred. Men who valued something higher than their own lives. Yet these were soldiers. Ordinary soldiers, who belched and farted and cursed and spat. These were not gentlemen of the drawing room, yet these were British men, and it meant something to them, enough for them to want to die as British men, and the nation loved them for it. The men of the Birkenhead Drill. That is all from the Cyberpass for now. Thank you very much, and goodbye.